Did a double homicide leave this historical mansion haunted?
Who or what lurks in the basement of this manor?
Are persistent electrical problems caused by resident ghosts?
Find out the answers to these questions and more as we uncover the eerie hauntings and history from the Glensheen Mansion in Duluth, Minnesota.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
And this is The Haunted Atlas, a Haunted U.S. podcast. Situated amongst a row of historical manors, Glensheen Mansion's decorative brick facade fits right in. With over a century of history and a dark past, these suspected hauntings make Glensheen Mansion stand out from these other stately homes. By the late 1800s, Duluth, Minnesota had become quite a populous city. Chester and Clara Congdon moved there in 1892, and our history begins with them. So they're moving here right at prime time when Duluth is becoming, very populous. There's a lot to do there.
Right.
Chester was a wealthy attorney, and he actually moved to Duluth to work for the Oliver Iron Mining Company. The company was so successful with Chester working there that he actually ended up opening his own iron company in 1901, which then skyrocketed his wealth.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy to me that he went from being an attorney to opening an iron mining company, which I guess he knew something about from his time working there, but it seems like quite a jump to me.
Yes. Well, it's funny because, as I work for a law firm, something that I didn't realize until I worked for one is that attorneys actually have to be good business people. And the reason being is because they have to reach out to clients to try to sell them on the firm. And so that was something I didn't realize attorneys had to do. But yeah, it almost makes sense to me that he would be good at running a business because he probably had experience, even though the core work of an attorney is law.
Mm-hmm.
That's a side part of it.
And that's a good point, especially if he was seeing the business side so up close, because he likely was if he was their attorney.
Yes.
So maybe it's not as big of a jump as I originally thought.
But okay, the Oliver Mining Company, did you know, with us being from Pittsburgh, that Andrew Carnegie had a half interest in it?
No.
Yeah, Henry Oliver shared half interest with Andrew Carnegie, and then it became a subsidiary of U.S. Steel.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Look at that connection. I was thinking Oliver Iron Mining Company. I'd never heard of that. And not that I've heard of every mining company that ever existed in that era.
Right.
But I feel like you do hear of the Carnegie and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that these big tycoons were still involved.
Yeah.
In 1903, 2 years later, given all of the success that they had had, Chester and Clara purchased a property along Lake Superior's shore. The property sat for another 2 years until construction began in 1905 on their home, and it finished just 3 additional years later in 1908. They named it Glensheen Mansion. And the name is actually pretty interesting. The first half, Glen, comes from the Scottish word for ravine, which is likely because it's right next to Lake Superior. And the second half, Sheen, is thought to be a reference to Chester's familial home, Sheen, which is located in England.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool that I feel like back then they really combined, the names for things were combinations of different things from their previous lives.
And very meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, very meaningful. And I just imagine how beautiful along Lake Superior's shores to be able to pick where you build a house because you're that wealthy. That sounds incredible.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Chester did die just 8 years later in 1916, but Clara stayed in the mansion, and she ran it herself for 34 more years until her death in 1950.
Go Clara.
I know.
That's great.
And it's so uncommon for that time.
Yes.
But I wonder if it's because they were just so wealthy that some societal standards might not have mattered as much to them, or just the fact that she could afford to pay for anything that she needed done.
That's a fair point. Yeah. Maybe the issue, there were a lot of issues for women back then, but maybe one of the main ones was that if their husband passed, they didn't have enough to support themselves. And so for Clara, that might not have been a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Assumedly. Yeah,
I'm sure it wasn't. After her death, their daughter Elisabeth took over ownership, and she actually lived in the mansion until 1977 when she died. So the family owned it until fairly recently. The story of her death is a dark one. Here's where the history kind of takes a turn. We've had this successful businessman that's building a family home along this beautiful shore, and it goes to their daughter after his wife lives there for a long period of time. Their daughter lives there happily. She adopts children, raises them there. One of them is named Marjorie. She was quickly going through Elisabeth's fortune. Elisabeth suffered a stroke in the mid-1970s, and she could no longer fund Marjorie's life. She had to make some changes to her finances, how things were run in general. She had this whole property and mansion to look after as well. Allegedly, Marjorie and her husband, Rodger Caldwell, devised a plan to murder Elisabeth and thus quicken Marjorie's inheritance of the family fortune. On June 27, 1977, Rodger broke into the Glensheen Mansion under the cover of night and smothered Elisabeth in her sleep.
That is a horrible way. I mean, obviously murder in all senses is horrible, but to suffocate someone just feels like so dramatic.
I think it's because they thought that they could get away with it. I think they probably thought maybe it's a stroke, or, maybe she somehow smothered herself, or it's not as personal as if they killed her certain ways. They always say you can tell when a victim is personal versus not based on the way that they're killed.
Right.
Sadly, her home nurse, Velma, was also murdered. Upon first investigation, police did assume it was a standard robbery, because why would you think anything else?
Yeah.
It was only after further investigation that they uncovered Marjorie's financial troubles and thus began to suspect her and Rodger. With Elisabeth's death, the mansion no longer was in the family. It had been donated to the University of Minnesota. The university took over and opened it to the public 2 years later in 1979, and the mansion has 39 rooms and over 27,000 square feet.
That's huge. And it's also, like you said, kind of cool that it's recent. Like, I feel like, that was 1979?
Yeah.
And then I'm curious because if the murder happened in 1977, it almost feels like we would have heard about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I recognize that that's like 60, 50 years back now, but 1977 feels recent enough.
Right. But if you think about it, it's not like it's a serial killer. It's not like it's it's not Ted Bundy.
Right.
It's just this one case of a family dispute.
Right.
And not even a dispute, just quickening inheritance, which is a crazy concept to me.
Yes.
Once it opened as a museum, visitors were in awe of the historical beauty of the mansion. However, many were also in awe of the alleged hauntings.
Hey guys, I'm Tommy from Tommy Cullum's Let's Get Freaky podcast, where we talk to real people and have real conversations about paranormal experiences, including ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, and all high strangeness, and even a little bit of conspiracy too. So if you enjoy these freaky conversations, check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're also available to watch on YouTube. Tommy Cullum's Let's Get Freaky.
The family secrets and dark history of this mansion are sinister in their own right, but the hauntings offer an additional layer of this paranormal site. Given the terrible events surrounding her death, it's no surprise to me that Elisabeth is said to haunt this mansion.
Yeah.
I think when you hear the history, she's the first person that comes to mind.
Yes, because, and I know we haven't talked actually about the hauntings yet, but we talk about intelligent versus unintelligent hauntings, and it's almost as if when some traumatic death like that happens, sometimes I almost think that they don't even realize that they've died.
Right.
Because she was sleeping. So she could, if it's unintelligent in a way, she might just think that she's still living her life there.
That's an interesting take. Let me tell you about her hauntings, then we can see if you think that still. I think, like you're saying, the way she was killed, it makes sense she's haunting it, because being murdered by your son-in-law at the direction of your daughter is awful.
Yes.
So lots of unfinished business, emotional trauma, etc. Plus, Elisabeth was raised in the mansion and spent her adult life there raising her children, so she's lived there her whole life. It's definitely a place of significance to her. Her spirit is said to occupy her old bedroom, which is where she was murdered, but also the library. In her bedroom, visitors report that they have an overall negative and sad feeling that only seems to affect them in that specific room. They immediately feel better after exiting it. Again, that makes sense. These are logical hauntings to me. That's where she was murdered. If her spirit's there, she's upset, of
Yes.
course. In the library, she's said to appear as a white mist, and people attribute this to Elisabeth because the library was one of her favorite rooms in the house. So it's kind of opposite.
Yeah.
Her least favorite room in the house at this point, because it's where she was murdered, versus the library, her favorite place where she's showing up. So it's kind of a duality of her spirit there.
Yeah, it's almost as if her spirit's like split. So like, you know, if she had passed on anywhere else and it wasn't a murder, would she have gone to the library because that's her favorite spot? And then, you know, because this traumatic death happened in her room, it's like her spirit split and like now part of it is in her room.
That's an interesting perspective. Like, would she be at Glensheen regardless of where and how she died?
Yeah.
Because rather than picturing it as split spirits, I always think she's roaming the house.
Oh, yeah.
Like when someone's in her bedroom, she's maybe in there with them.
Yeah.
And same with the library. But it could be two separate occurrences, or people have different theories on how time works for the paranormal. So it could be just like coexisting.
Yes. Yeah.
And when people see this white mist, it actually moves through the library, almost as if she's walking, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Now, the white mist is what I picture spirits as. I don't know if you remember this discussion that we had, but as soon as you said white mist, I was like, yeah, that's how I picture them.
That's so funny to me. And I think it's interesting, though, she's appearing as the white mist in the library, but not in her bedroom.
Yeah.
And maybe it is because she wants to be in the library, but she's also not appearing as a full body apparition. So I was trying to think of the significance of the white mist, and I couldn't really identify what I thought the reasoning was.
She's not appearing at all in her room, right? It's
Correct.
more just the feeling. Maybe that room dampens whatever appearance she's decided to take. I can't imagine the overwhelming feelings she must get as a spirit if she's intelligent and in there.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe it's just she doesn't want to put energy into appearing in there. She hates it. So.
Or she's hiding.
Oh, that's a good perspective.
I just thought about that. Like maybe she just doesn't want to be seen because, you know.
Yeah. So all that said, do you think this is an intelligent haunting?
I think it is. So the library has sold me on it being a intelligent haunting because it feels as though if she's moving through, then, you know, she's making intentional movements, especially because it's not just white mist throughout the whole house. It's like in a certain area. So I feel like if it was unintelligent, it would just be all over.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So she's like intentionally walking and looking at the books in the stacks.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I feel kind of torn. I think given the fact that there's the sadness in the bedroom, she must know that she's dead, because otherwise why would she be sad in her bedroom?
True.
Yes, she was smothered, but theoretically it's in her sleep. So how much of that would have affected her life versus the overwhelming happiness she likely felt there? That makes me think it's intelligent. I do wonder if the library aspect is sort of running on a loop, dependent on how she moves. So I think I would have to see it for myself and see if there's a pattern. If she's walking in a different pattern every single time, or the mist is floating,
right,
which is what people see, I'm saying she's walking, then if it's different every time, I think it is an intelligent haunting. If it's the same every time, I would say it's not an intelligent haunting, that aspect of it.
Yeah, well, and that makes sense to me too, that it might be on a loop, because if her routine was a specific one in there and she liked being there so often, it's safe to assume that she had a routine. Then yeah, maybe she's just repeating that over and over again.
Right. But again, that depends on people's takes on, like, is it the existence of one spirit and one manifestation of that spirit versus multiple manifestations? Elisabeth's home nurse, Velma, is also said to haunt the mansion. And she is known to specifically haunt the staircase landing, which is where her body was found after the double homicide. Many claim that she manifests as a cold spot, but visitors have also seen her as a shadow figure. She can be seen walking through the halls near the staircase, and seeing her figure and visiting these spaces is often associated with a similar overall negative feeling to Elisabeth's room, and some say they even feel lightheaded.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
And I do wonder always when there is a homicidal, dark history to a place, if people feel lightheaded when they know that there's somewhere where the death happened. For example, I know at the Lizzie Borden house, people report feeling lightheaded, but they also know that murders happened there.
Yes.
So I think it depends on if they know the past, how they're feeling lightheaded. Is it a hot day? You know, there could be a lot of factors.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's natural when you're in a space like that to kind of put yourself in the shoes of the person who went through the trauma there. And I feel like we do that without even trying. Like if you're in a space like that, it just happens automatically. Feeling lightheaded or sick or negative does make sense.
So the cold spots and the negative feelings, I think that could be paranormal or normal dependent. Now the shadow figure, again, depending on how they're seeing it, assuming that it's actually a moving shadow figure and not just a figure standing in a shadowed area necessarily, I think that's paranormal.
I agree. And it also reminds me of what I said about Elisabeth's spirit hiding. I'm thinking that Velma's spirit might also be hiding. And that makes me sad thinking about it because I hope that they're not just trying to hide for their entire afterlife. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually not a bad point. That's kind of sad.
Yes. They can't be out in the open. They're constantly paranoid. If it is intelligent, it is sad.
Especially because it was their home. You know, it was Elisabeth's home from her childhood and Velma was her home nurse. So they have a right to be there and take up space there.
Yes.
Sometimes the two ghosts are actually seen together. People report the women seen through a window when looking in from the outside. And it's almost as if they're watching over Glensheen in their afterlife. And so this makes me think it is intelligent hauntings, that they've just kind of banded together. They're looking out the window. And when they're seen together, it's said that people report a positive feeling, which is in sharp contrast to their individual ghosts.
Yeah, I love that. That makes me feel better. And then I was thinking, what if instead of hiding, they're just watching? You know what I'm saying? Maybe not hiding. If they found each other and they are just keeping watch over the mansion, maybe Elisabeth hides her appearance in the room because she's like, who's in there? What are they about to do to whoever else is in there? And then Velma's on the staircase in her little shadow figure form, what's going on at the top of the stairs? You know what I mean?
They're on guard.
Yeah.
That's actually a cool idea. I think it's interesting because it's almost like we were talking about with the library and the bedroom being so different for Elisabeth. It's like segments of their life showing up in different areas of the mansion. This is where you can see that they were likely good friends and they liked to be around each other. So I think that that's an interesting part of it, that it's in such a contrast.
Yeah.
Now, because I always want to be skeptical, there is also the possibility that this isn't an intelligent haunting and this is just another residual thing from their life. Maybe they would like to stand in the kitchen and look out over the grounds together, you know? So there's always the possibility. I think this is one of those cases where I would need more information on how they're manifesting before I make a clear decision.
Yeah, I agree.
There are general hauntings in addition to these two named ghosts. There are reported issues with lights flickering, even though there are no identified electrical problems. And I'm always skeptical.
Yes.
Lights flickering can happen for so many electrical problems. But it's verified that there are no issues here, so I can't think of another reason that this is happening other than the paranormal.
No, that's fair. I mean, especially because it's a museum. I'm sure that they've looked into getting the lights to stop flickering because that's probably in a mansion dangerous, if it's too dark in there. So that makes sense to me that if they can't find any electrical issues, and I'm assuming that they've tried.
Right. Like you're saying, I'm sure they want to keep it functioning nicely. They don't want guests to have to deal with that, especially it's owned by the University of Minnesota. It's not like they're short on cash.
Right.
So that's something that would be fixed. And along with these electrical abnormalities, there are reports of small objects moving around the house on their own.
Oh, that's really interesting.
It's interesting because I was thinking Elisabeth or Velma, which is it? But then that eliminates the possibility of any other spirits there when there definitely could be.
Yeah, honestly, even Marjorie or Rodger could be there. I mean, if this was a significant event for them, did we talk about if they ever got caught?
Yeah, they did get caught.
Okay. So then, yeah, if they have regrets.
Interesting. I wasn't thinking so much that they had regrets, but just that it was almost like a punishment.
Oh.
Like they're stuck there because of the unfinished business. But imagine being stuck with your mother-in-law after you killed her.
Yeah.
That does sound like punishment, but that's also kind of punishment for Elisabeth. You wouldn't want to be punished, or you wouldn't want to be stuck with the person that killed you.
Right.
There are also photographic abnormalities that seem to occur here. and people report unexplained lights in photographs, and some claim that they have captured figures in the background of photos. I searched up and down trying to find evidence of these, but I couldn't really find anything that was convincing to myself. And we know that they can happen for so many reasons, so it can be tough to pin these things, especially light abnormalities, to the paranormal.
Yes, agreed.
The final alleged haunting happens in the basement. Basements in general are creepy, poorly lit, and often seem to be haunted. In this case, the haunting is a shadow figure that roams the hallways down there. And again, thinking in the named ghosts that are there, Elisabeth or Velma, but I was thinking it could be a previous worker of the mansion.
Oh, in the basement, that makes sense.
Yeah, because why would Elisabeth or Velma be down there?
Right.
I mean, maybe, but I'm sure they didn't spend a ton of time down there.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, when you're wealthy enough to have a mansion, I'm sure you're not doing dirty work in the basement. And also, Elisabeth was elderly.
Oh, right. Yeah, so stairs,
Right.
That's also got to be hard.
Right. But the only thing is that there's the manifestation of this spirit. It doesn't really do anything harmful or anything significant, so it kind of could be anyone. It could even maybe be residual energy of just all of the workers that used to be down there.
That's true. Yeah, if it's not really doing anything intelligent, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So those are all of the hauntings of Glensheen Mansion. And you can visit Glensheen yourself for historical tours and chance a ghost sighting of your own. If you have visited Glensheen, we would love to hear from you about your stories. You can email us at theteam@hauntedus.com and include Haunted Atlas episode 23 in the subject, or find us on social media at Haunted US and send us a message. Tune in to our next episode to see where we drop the pin on our adventure across the Haunted US. This episode of the Haunted Atlas was presented by Sarah Sweeney and Erica Barrett. It was researched by Sarah Sweeney, supported by research from Haunted US head writer Mitch Goff, with production assistance by David Sweeney, and music by Colleen Johnson. Our executive producer is Brandon Rugsey. Haunted Atlas is a production of Haunted US. Visit hauntedus.com for more information.